Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Hi, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
Sometimes we use quotes on this podcast, as people who've been listening know.
We like quotes.
We're big quote fans.
Yeah.
But we have found that some of the best quotes come from all of you, from people working in the field. You know, famous and well-known people and authors, and their quotes are nice.
They're valid. Yeah, they're good quotes.
Yeah, but they're not like from you.
Yeah.
So what we've decided to do in this episode and the next episode is focus each one on a quote that we found to resonate with us, to be particularly meaningful to us. And we're going to start out with a quote from an early childhood professional working in a classroom every day. And her name is Mehar Khan. So hi, Mehar, and thank you for letting us use your name and use your quote. This is something that she actually included in her portfolio as she was trying to work toward her CDA credential. And I thought it was brilliant. Here's what Mehar wrote. She said, "Instead of buying things we never had, teach them things we were never taught." And I stopped right there and I thought, oh, that is such a great way to phrase it.
Good. It's really good.
Right?
Yeah.
Great way to phrase what we should be focusing on. People worry all the time about what do we have? What do we have? Especially families, right? What can we afford? What do we have? What do we want to give them? And I'm going to admit, being the sort of parent who bought things for my children simply because my parents wouldn't have bought it for us. I'll admit it.
But you hear that a lot. Like, I want to give them what I didn't have. You hear that a lot. I want to give them what I didn't have. And
right.
It's not always about those material things that they should be given.
They need to be given the important lessons that we were never taught. Mehar is absolutely right. Though, you know, if they wanted a gumball from the machine, they got a quarter from me.
Yeah.
All right.
It's fine.
And they have lived to tell the tale. But at any rate, you know, teach them things that you weren't taught. And I thought that is so true. There were so many things that I know I wasn't taught that I think we could collect.
Also was not taught, because we had this long conversation about like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. I think this is why this resonates with us, because so much stuff.
I think collectively there are generations that could say, you know, we weren't taught that our emotions are valid. We've talked about that in the past on this podcast. We weren't taught how to handle conflict well. We've maybe talked about that in an episode or two.
Yeah.
But there are so many other nitty-gritty, everyday life sorts of things that we weren't taught that we need to teach the children about. And they can be the self-help skills you wish you had, you know, like, you know, maybe you wish you were taught more about how to keep a clean home.
Yes, that would have been nice.
You're welcome. Maybe you wish you would have been taught more about budgeting money.
Another thing, yes. I also think I would have liked to have been taught some things that I think the reason why we weren't taught was because that's not a girl thing.
Oh, or a boy thing.
Or a boy thing, you know? So like, I don't think girls were ever taught how to like take care of their car, you know, or things like that, because that's a man thing or a boy thing, you know, and I just don't.
Well, if you're lucky like me, you pay for towing.
Yes, Cindy will just pay for it.
I'll just
because
pay.
She's like, I'm not doing that, but it wouldn't be nice not to have to pay.
I mean, I guess if you like getting dirty, I don't know, but again, this, you know, I'm
like
sort of like
money.
someone else. Yeah, I do too. So, you know, maybe it's that sort of gender-based thing. You know, I'm sure that there are also plenty of men who weren't taught certain things, like, you know, cleaning the bathroom tub or something.
Or
I don't
changing a baby's diaper.
Changing a baby's diaper.
Yeah.
You know, my two sons proudly, they do cook for themselves. We, you know, I'm not the world's greatest cook, and maybe it was survival on their part.
Your husband cooks sometimes.
Yes,
that's
he does.
Maybe why
he does,
because they had that role model. Yeah,
maybe. I think it was survival. but there are things. There's the, here's how you handle a checking account. Here's how you write a check. This generation does not know how to write checks.
No, they don't. I'm a big check writer.
Are you? Still?
Yes, but I taught myself how to do that.
All right.
Yes, because my family never used checks. They pay. My mom will still pay cash for everything if she could. So that's
Interesting.
maybe generational. I don't
Maybe.
know. It would have been nice to learn how to do taxes without having to pay somebody to do that. Like practical things like that.
Or even just to understand
Just to
it.
understand it would be nice. Yeah.
I just thought of something. You know what you do with your young children is you give them an allowance and tax them. And you have to be like, you've earned a dollar, but 15 cents of that goes into the family piggy bank. 15 cents of that goes into the family piggy bank. And then when the family has enough money, we'll go get ice cream or something. But you don't get the whole paycheck.
Thing. I think that would maybe make people not so like why are they taking all my money when you get older? Maybe
what it would actually do is teach children the importance of working together as a society and community.
That's true.
For a common good, like going to get ice cream.
Yes.
Look at this. I just had that on the spot.
Payroll tax is supposed to do, right? It's supposed to go
allegedly.
It is allegedly supposed to go towards new roads or something, or the schools. Right. I don't know, but
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a whole other episode in ball of wax. So, I also think about other really, really practical things that when I think back about my childhood, I wasn't necessarily taught.
Yeah.
We talk about things also that we should be doing in our early childhood programs that also need to take place at home. Like, we are supposed to be teaching children about the value of our differences and the importance of multicultural societies. And that can't only take place in my classroom. So if you're listening and you're a homeschooler or a parent who's not a homeschooler, or you're raising children or participating in that, think about taking the sorts of things that we tend to rely on early childhood programs for, and how you can incorporate that in your everyday routines and practices with children. I'm not trying to send home homework to families all the time because they have very busy, complicated lives, and I get that. But if we can do things and advise families about, here's a conversation you can have while you're in the car with your children, going wherever you go. Here's something you can do while you are setting the table, doing laundry. Here's something you can do in your normal routine to think about. And I think families also need to think intentionally about what are the lessons we didn't learn as children that we would want to pass on to our children, which Mehar actually, when I spoke to her about this quote and asked her permission to use it, spoke to me about some things that she felt would have been nice to know as an adult, which I think we all have a list.
Yes.
And how she was determined to teach that to her children. I think every generation we do that in some way, but I think that it tends to be a little haphazard and not planned.
Yeah. Well, I think things are more intentional now. Like you were saying, like, what can you talk about in the car? Intentionally planning that out. When we were kids, I don't think there was anything intentional. I don't think people thought that way. I don't think it's their fault. I just don't think they thought, like, I can intentionally have this conversation on the way to the supermarket and it'll teach them something. I don't think that was happening then.
Do you think that it was reserved for times when, like, the children were in trouble? That's why.
Yeah.
And the intentional conversation was when we did something wrong.
Yeah.
But instead we can think, okay, what do these children need to know? The children need to know, and we teach them in early childhood centers some really basic things, like you need to know that when you sneeze or cough, you do that into your elbow.
Yes.
You need to know that if you need to blow your nose into a tissue, you should wash your hands afterward. Yeah. It could be like simple, even grooming sorts of things. You need to know that if your shirt was tucked in before you used the toilet, you should come out and try and tuck it back in. And I think that as children get older, that list just becomes more and more complex. Like, it would be nice if you anticipate that your child who may grow up to wear makeup, that you intentionally teach them how to do that.
That would have been a lesson. Yes, I didn't get those lessons, but that's okay.
It would be nice for my child to know how to what. And in early childhood programs, it would be nice for these children to not have to figure out on their own
Right.
how to do what. And I sometimes I think that has a lot to do with creating friendships.
Yes.
I think a lot of us were not intentionally taught.
I don't think we were taught that. It was kind of, you either made a friend on the playground or you didn't.
And we
there
didn't know
was-
how to
we didn't
sustain
know
it.
how to do it. Yes.
Yeah.
At least I didn't. But that's why I think like in my classroom, I teach them kind of practical things. I'm like, this is how you fold your blanket after nap time.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember that intentionally being taught to me, but how would you know how to do that unless somebody did? Like, and that's just taking care. That's part of, this is how you take care of your stuff. This is how you take care of your house. When you're older, you have to make a bigger bed. It's just kind of like little baby steps leading up to the big stuff.
Or you can do what I do and not make the bed
Not
unless
make
someone's coming. Right.
There's that too, but maybe it's because you weren't taught when you were younger. See?
Oh no, I think I probably, well, did we make our own beds or did my mother do it? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
see,
I've
But I
blocked
think
it out.
it's also maybe part of the problem of like our generation is like parents just did so much more for us sometimes. Like at least the
In
household
some ways, yeah.
stuff. Like I remember like my mom would be like, "Hey, we're having company over for a holiday. This is how you dust could you help me dust things or whatever, or vacuum for me?" And that's when I did it. It wasn't like, "Oh, we're going to do this every week because this is how you take care of your house." It
Right.
was like, "We're going to do this because people are coming." And I still feel like I have that attitude. I'm like, "Oh, I'll clean when somebody comes over."
Yeah.
Like if Cindy said she's coming, I'm going to clean. Okay. At this point, maybe I wouldn't though. Maybe I'd be like, "Yeah, she's like my sister. Who cares?" But like, it's still ingrained in my brain that that's what you do. You don't have to clean all the time. You just do it, and I'm trying to fight against
Well, because the things that are done with us in early childhood stick with us.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And if I want something to stick, it doesn't need to be the most expensive toy.
True.
It doesn't need to be the designer clothing. It needs to be the lessons that we didn't learn.
Yes.
Mayhar is absolutely
Yes,
right. It needs to
she's
be
absolutely right.
And it can be moral lessons in addition to
Yes.
these nuts and
Yes.
bolts. Like, what did I have to figure out as I grew up? One of the things I had to figure out, I think, as I grew up was that you can be honest and truthful and kind at the same time. Like you
Yes.
can tell people things that
Yes.
are honest
Yeah.
while you're figuring out what's kind. I don't know that that was intentionally
Yeah.
demonstrated. I don't know that making and sustaining friendships were intentionally taught
Yes.
to us. So that
Yes.
was something that I still struggle
For
with.
me, a lot of emotional stuff, which I know we've talked about many times, that I was never taught, and I still struggle with that, and I still go get professional help for that because I struggle with that. And I'm even with all the years of professional help, I still struggle because I think innately I'm in this like childhood phase of like, oh, we don't need to actually feel feelings. People don't want to hear
Well, that's what
about
we
your
were taught.
feelings.
That's what
Yeah.
we were taught.
And even if you go professionally for years and they say, no, they do. No, your
Mhm.
friends do care. And you're like, it's still like, it's so hard to overcome because once it's stuck in there, it's stuck in there. It's stuck.
I don't know if I was intentionally taught about planning because my mother was not a planner. She
Yeah.
was more of a fly by the seat of your pants person, which didn't work for me. So I grew up and
Yeah.
became a planner.
Yes.
And I still consistently seek out best ways to plan my life. Like, what tools am I going to use? What do I need to think about? Because it's not something that it's something I do
Yes.
very intentionally, but it's not something that necessarily was ingrained in me when I was
Right.
young.
Yeah.
So, in our classrooms, we should have visual schedules that show the children the plan for the day.
Yeah.
That I think is the beginning of children organizing their time and
Right.
figuring out how to plan their time.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that visual schedules in a classroom are not a decoration, but they actually reflect what's going to happen that day.
Yeah.
And they're set up every day. If for no other reason than to teach children, this is how we plan. I think
Yeah.
it's a good opportunity throughout the day in the classrooms to do something like go in the block area and say, so let's talk about what we're planning, because so many children are not taught, how do you plan something?
Well, yeah, I think that's true. And I also think the whole like daily schedule thing, it shows them like, this is what's happening next. I'm not trying to hide it from you.
Right.
When I was a kid, it was like, get in the car. You don't know where you're going. We don't have to tell you because we're the adults. And we make that decision. We don't have to tell you what's happening next. That's the way it was when I was a kid. We didn't often know what was coming next. And I think it's important for them to know that so they can plan, at least in their head, okay, I have 10 minutes about in my head to do blocks or whatever. And I'm going to plan this out. And then I know next after this is lunch.
So
you know what I mean?
we're talking about intentional planning
Yeah.
with children,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Talking to them about things we weren't talked to about, like how to keep friends or make friends.
How to have a conversation. I teach my kids that all the time at school. This is how you start a conversation. If you want to meet a friend, you can just go up and say, hey, what's your favorite color? What are you eating for lunch today? I give them all these questions so they have like it in their head, like, oh, I can ask somebody on the playground and then maybe we'll be friends, or, you know, because I don't think we were ever taught how to start conversations when we were kids. I don't remember. I don't remember that, but like, I'm very like intentional about that. This is how you can start a conversation. Here's like questions you can ask people that'll get you to know them better. And that's nice. It's a nice thing. Even if you don't become friends, it's just nice to know people, you know, and to talk to them.
And along those lines, I think we have to intentionally teach children about different cultures.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's no one right way to live. I think
Correct.
that sentence right there.
Yeah.
You know, were we taught there's no one right way to live? No, probably not.
No.
You know, and we know because we've talked about, you and I have talked about it so many times, you have to intentionally teach things like empathy and compassion that we know.
Yes.
I don't know that we always think about the life skills. There are certain life skills we teach children, but not others.
Not others. Yes.
Right? Not others.
Yes.
So just like in our classrooms, we have jobs and responsibilities. It's one of the reasons why it's important at home, but it should be a meaningful job.
Yes.
It should be like, here's how we sweep. Here's how we vacuum.
Yeah, I just had this conversation at work just this week where they made a mess on the floor.
Here's how we sweep it up.
And I said, why don't we just make a sweeping job? Like that's what I was saying to my aide. She goes, oh, you think they could do that? I'm like, I think they should do it. We have a small enough room. Why not?
Yeah.
And then they'll learn how to do it. And they'll learn like, oh, when I make a mess, I'm responsible for that mess. You know, like if I drop something, I'm responsible for it. Right?
It's true with your relationships with people too. If I make a mess,
I
have to know what to do. What do I do if I make a mess out of this
I
relationship?
need to be accountable for my actions.
I want to go back to the little things.
Okay.
Like it would be good to know things like clothing types.
That would be nice.
What are shoe types, clothing types? What's the best thing for our feet? What's the best thing to wear at what occasion? You ever wonder that? You ever sit and say, what does this mean?
Yes, I still struggle with that.
Yeah.
Like, what do I wear when? Is it appropriate to wear this then? What do I wear to fancy events?
Yes.
I never went to fancy events when I was a kid, you know? And
yes,
I think those are appropriate lessons because you don't want to show up in boots when you should be wearing heels or something. You know what I mean?
I have a story kind of related to this that I'm going to share with you. I use a coach, and my coach was asking me one day when we got on our call together about what products I use for my curly hair because she has straight hair, but her daughter has curly hair. So she was asking me like, what products do you use? Do you use this method of like getting your hair, doing with your hair after you shower? And she was asking me all these questions. So I was answering her questions and she said, you know, I wasn't really taught about this sort of thing and I don't have curly hair. So I'm trying to, and her daughter's very young. And she said, I'm trying to teach my daughter that you should take pride in the way that you look. And here's how you take care of curly hair. She said, I'm trying to really intentionally teach her that, you know, you deserve this brand of makeup, for example, when you get older, because this is the best brand or, you know, or this is one that's affordable. That's really good. And here's how you take care of your hair as an intentional lesson.
That's such a good lesson because as the only person in my family with curly hair, nobody knew how to deal with it. And I learned that as an adult, this is how I take care of my hair through my own research.
Right.
And only because I wanted to take care of myself, you know, because nobody else knew. And it might be like, hey, they didn't have curly hair and they just assume all hair is the same. All hair is not the same. You know? So, and I appreciate that she's trying to teach her properly.
I applauded her when she told me that. I said, good for you. Teach her all about it. So I was giving her all kinds of tips for wet curly hair and all that stuff. Which, by the way, folks, if you're curious about, you know, let me know. But I was
Either one
I
of
was
us.
giving because we weren't necessarily
Yeah,
taught.
we were not taught that.
So I was giving her those
Yeah.
tips, and this is, us sort of talking about this quote, but I'm sure you all out there can come up with things that where you're thinking, okay, it isn't about what I buy them, it's what wasn't I taught,
Yes.
right? What wasn't I taught? And I encourage you all to reflect on that. The things that you
Yeah.
wish you would have known that
Mhm.
we could start to lay a foundation for in the early childhood years. Make yourself a list, one that's professionally appropriate. And if you're
Right.
raising children, one that's home appropriate,
Yep.
and make that a part of what you're doing. Because I think that there are some things you probably do very intentionally
Yes.
teach them about self-help, for example, and other things that you don't realize, oh, wait, I had to learn that as I got older.
Yeah.
That would be good to teach the children.
Yeah.
So I encourage you to make those lists, and thank you again, Mehar, for letting us use your quote. I'm going to read it one more time because I don't want people, when people are like, wait, what was that quote? I don't want them to have to back up.
Yeah.
The quote was, instead of buying things we never had, teach them things we were never taught.
Yeah.
And we're just going to let you sit there with this just little additional piece of information. First, if you want to give us your quote, please do. Please contact us either through our website, through the Spaces by Wix app, which connects to our website. You can learn about it on our website, or our Facebook page. So contact us somehow, and we'll consider using your quote. Or if there's someone who has said something brilliant, get their permission and
Yes.
contact us.
Yes.
But you have to get their permission.
Yeah.
And tune in next time for part 2 of Quotes from the Field. See you then.
Bye, peeps.